Have you ever sat down in front of a screen and been so seduced by a plot that you have to find out how it ends? Well, we're going to learn how to produce that effect for your own audience today. And we have joining us Mark Solomon, who has worked with all of the major Hollywood studios as a film editor. He's been an ACE Eddie Award nominee. His films have been nominated for Oscar and Golden Globe, and he's just released his book with very practical tips to help entrepreneurs develop our own storytelling capabilities. So I'd like to welcome you, Mark.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks, Melissa.
So I never realized before reading your book the level of complexity that goes into creating a powerful and successful film, especially the role that the editor plays and bringing it all together. So you talk at the very beginning of the book, you talk about the story being created three times. First by the
Mhm.
screenwriter, then by the director and the actors, and finally by the editor. So I want to start off by having you talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be in such a high stakes role where you know that millions of dollars have already been invested just to get the actors, to get the location, the costumes, just to start recording, and that you ultimately have to turn that into a powerful story. So I have the sense that this is also an industry, the film industry, where you can maybe fail once or twice, but you probably can't fail repeatedly or you wouldn't get hired again. So not all the pieces depend on you. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's like?
Well, it comes with the territory. It's like walking a tightrope, but you can't think about it like that. You have to sort of focus on the creative process itself. And on a good project, you're working with wonderfully talented people, and the chance to collaborate creatively with a team of people on a live action movie, the director and the cinematographer, and all the people who generate the material, and in an animated movie like a lot of the ones I've worked on.
Mhm.
You're working with people who draw beautiful storyboards, and the people who are responsible for all the other parts of the movie work together creatively. And so you're really only thinking about how do we make this something that will be enjoyable and entertaining for other people.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I really appreciated from your book is the piece of getting people engaged right from the beginning. So I've been studying story for the last several years. I've read a ton of books, but there's a lot of things in your books that I never had heard before. And so I think it has to do with the fact that you really focus not so much on how to develop characters or the storyline, but how to keep the audience engaged. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about Joe Hawque and how your beginnings in theater really shaped your particular style in achieving films that are so engaging.
Yeah, that's sort of my unique point as an editor is that I come from a background in live theater, and I had the fortune to work at a summer theater in Connecticut, this is going back several years, and where we did traditional Asian theater forms. And one of them was the Japanese theater. We did like kabuki and kyogen plays. And the way that the performing arts are refined in Japanese aesthetics is just beautiful, and it really had a big influence on me going forward to the rest of my career. And the big thing is to create the feeling of a conversation with the audience, and that you're looking to engage people where they are in the audience. And I talk about in the book Over the Shoulder about meeting people where they are, like taking the audience where they are, and in traditional Japanese theater, the actors decide when to start the play. And you start the play when people are start to worried about when's the play going to start. And that gives people the focus on the stage, like is something wrong? And the actors wait for that moment when the audience starts to get restless and then calls to open the curtain and enter the stage. And in a film or a screen based medium, you can't really be live with the audience, but you
Mhm.
can create that feeling of building a conversation. So people ask, what's happening? What happens next? Oh, they're starting. Oh, who is this character? And then you start to build this back and forth dialogue with the audience of what's going to happen next. And Joe Hawque, which you mentioned, is the way you sort of build rhythm into the story, because especially with the kind of work that I did in animated movies, The story is really told in storyboards, where story artists build a comic book version of the story, which you can do in anything, like an
Mhm.
Instagram. It helps you to sort of sketch out what you see first and what you see second. So you put thought into what you're going to shoot, and then sort of build these little crescendos of rhythm where Joe Ha Q is Joe means the beginning,
Mhm.
Ha means sort of the rising up, and Q is the turning point. And so Joe Ha Q describes this sort of crescendo that builds in peaks and valleys. And if you can build that into your story, it feels like it's the story is breathing in a very natural rhythm. And so Joe tells you when to start and where you're headed. Ha is like how the tension develops. And Q is like a turning point. And each little moment has Joe Ha Q. In Japan, it would be Joe Ha Q. And then you build that up in individual moments, then in bigger sections over the course of a whole scene or a sequence, and then over the course of the whole story, where you build up to a peak in the whole story where you leave people with something to remember and take with them.
Okay. And for most of us, I mean, look, I'm honestly, I'm never going to do a feature film probably, right? But I will be doing videos for YouTube, reels for
Mhm.
Instagram, live event presentations, right? So that's my own version, I guess, of a feature film. So, how would you prepare to meet the audience where they are? How do you prepare to really engage them from the get-go in something that's a lot shorter, and perhaps not such a well thought out process?
Well, when there's less at stake, when you're making a short that someone's going to see on their phone, imagine one viewer. Like picture one person, like who's your ideal viewer? Who's your ideal listener? Who do you want to reach? And imagine them and the situation where they're going to be viewing what you've presented.
Mhm.
And so, how do you sort of gain their attention? And what do you want to leave them with? So, you can work backwards from the end. Like, what do you want to leave people with? A feeling of astonishment, amusement, empowerment, that they're motivated to do something, and then give yourself a distance to travel so that in the beginning you have a way to get to that end point.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's actually something I'd like you to go a little bit deeper on. And because one of the tips, there's several tips that I got from the book that I've already been able to put into play. But one of the things, it's like now that I've started seeing the role of the video editor, I can't stop seeing it. So you
Good.
talk about like speeding things up, slowing things down. Could you talk to us just a little bit about that? How you can use these, what you can use to kind of show the passage of time, to really draw people in, to make them feel like this is something that they want to lean into.
Yes, I mean, at this stage, I mean, a lot of that is instinctual, and I sort of trust my intuition. But that comes when you're more earlier in my career, and when you're starting out with whatever kind of projects you're doing. How do you when you watch movies? When is it done well? What have you seen where the sort of building of time and tension goes well? And so then it's sort of by feel. I mean,
Mhm.
really good film editors talk about that it's not an intellectual process. It's more of a sort of gut feeling of when do you want to see something new? How
Okay.
long can you hold a reaction on one thing before you move on to the next so that you build, figuring that you keep in your mind the point of view of the viewer asking what happens next.
Okay.
And if you want to engage them enough so that they're on the edge of their seat going, and then what? And so you play with that expectation and build a conversation.
All right. I'm gonna bring on our my co-host today in just a moment, but before, I just wanted to tell everyone to go get Mark's book. It's called Over the Shoulder: A Freelancer's Guide to Telling Stories and Editing Films. You can get it on sevenpinespublishing.com. That's a numeral seven. It's a number seven. Sevenpinespublishing.com. It's also on Amazon. So go. I'll let you come up to the stage now, Monica. I know that you had some questions, if you want to go ahead and take it over.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so Mark, what I'd like to ask you a little bit, it's about the plot changes. One of the stories you tell is about the opportunity that everything seemed to be opening up for you to produce for your first film. And after reading how much is involved in the early process, even emotionally,
Mhm.
just getting excited about choosing the cast, the location, and actually bringing everything together. And suddenly there was a plot change, and the movie didn't end up getting produced. So, for the benefits of those listening, whether they are freelancers, entrepreneurs, or even professionals in their career, can you tell us about dealing with a plot change like this? And what declare victory and move on means for you in your business and in your life?
Well, that's sort of a motto that's helped me through the peaks and valleys of working sort of a project to project based career. And the project you're referring to, where I had an opportunity to direct a movie, was something that, was very exciting opportunity. I got to work with a cast in the Philippines and sort of work with people who were professionals in filmmaking, but from a different culture and a different nation. And it was sort of tenuous, and it didn't work out. And every movie, it's amazing when you think of all the things that can go wrong, that anything gets made, especially independent projects. And this applies to the other kinds of projects that I've worked on that haven't all been feature films. Some of them are shorter, and they either go forward and are successful, or they fall short for whatever of 100 different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
the way to sort of stay sane and stay positive is to take on this motto, which I call declare victory and move on. That you learn what you can from the experience, whatever it was, let it go and move on to the next one. And that's true for the successes as well as the ones that don't succeed. I don't like to call them failures because they're lessons, and you don't hold on to and attach yourself to the result. You learn from the process and move on to the next one, so that you build resilience and a resourcefulness to deal with setbacks. Because if you let one setback knock you down and you never get up, you don't have a career. You just have an opportunity that didn't work out. But to
Yeah,
stay with it and to move on to the next one is the healthiest way to sort of go forward.
that's a great advice, even in everything, in everyday life, right?
Yeah.
Um, Another question. I had the impression that it's actually a handful of people that are making 80% of the movies. Is that correct? And if so, how do you deal with such a competitive industry? And what are some of the challenges that come up in your daily life? How do you prepare yourself to always stay on top of the industry that I
Mm.
would imagine is incredible and intensively competitive?
Well, yeah, I can't worry about the competition. I mean, you worry about building allies and thinking about who are the people that I work well with and want to stay in touch with, so that we work on future projects together. Because when you're starting out, that's the way that a career in the movie making business, that certainly applies. And I think in a lot of businesses, when you're starting out, you have a sort of battle hardened association with the people that you've worked with, and the people that you like, you seek out to work with again. And some of the people who have minor roles, when you first start out, they become, I've worked with people who were like a production manager or an assistant director on an early movie when we were all sort of scrappy people starting out, and then they go on to become producers or executives at studios, and you build a bond with those people of trust and experience where you want to work with them again. And those are the people that I wind up working for going into the future. And it's a big enough business, and you have to take a positive approach and honestly believe, this isn't in the book, but to say, to myself, the universe loves you, wants you to succeed,
Yes.
and sort of take that on, so that so you look at the world and the competition as an opportunity and not as something that's working against you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now we are bringing Ruth.
Hello, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can perfectly.
Awesome. Thanks, Monica. Those were great questions. I'd like to ask you about the issue, and I'm not sure how long it actually takes, so maybe you can tell us. How long does it take to make a movie? I'm guessing or assuming it should be anywhere between 1 to 4 years from, idea all the way through to end of filming and editing.
They can take a long time. It very much depends on the project. Feature films take a long time, usually to develop the script to start with, where it's just the writer and the producer, and then there's the sort of all the pre-production of going out to find a director and the cast and the crew, and then making the actual film, and then the post-production and getting it delivered and marketed to the theaters. So that project usually takes a few years. In
Oh,
animated films, it often takes longer because the story development has to take into account that you have to build everything that you see. You can't just go to a location and take what's there. You have to make everything. So there's a lot of creative development that goes on, and projects can take years and years. I mean, I worked on this one movie, Shrek, I worked on it for the first year, and went on to do several other projects. Was married and had a child, came back, did another movie, and the movie still wasn't finished.
I
It was
can't
like
believe that.
5, 6 years in development.
Wow,
But luckily
amazing.
for all the people that I work with, it was a big hit. So that's the sort of payoff.
Definitely. So, what happens, maybe not with animation, when you're lost in your sauce of, getting this movie out there, and all of a sudden, something big, huge, and very impactful happens in the world, and you cannot ignore it. Otherwise, your audience is going to be totally tone deaf to your story. What happens then?
Well, and on shorter term projects, like if you're making sort of a half hour for television or you're doing something for the internet specifically, you can respond and react to what's happening in the world around you, the cultural significance of things. On a feature, because animated movies in particular take such a long time, you generally avoid the calendar and you look for evergreen themes where you're
Mhm.
not affected by what's happening in the world. I mean, you it doesn't always work. Sometimes when the movie comes out at a time where you're making light of a subject or some tragic tragedy happens in the world, and that stuff's not funny,
Yes,
and there's not
definitely.
much you can do about that. Or sometimes things work serendipitously, where the movie comes out at a time where just that issue is what everybody's talking about, so everybody wants to see the movie. You have to let go of what you can't control.
Totally. And what about how, maybe, if to quote you, you just said you can't control, right? What you can't control. At the beginning of your career, you mentioned in your book that you wanted to get your foot in the door. So you wrote personal letters to the senior film editors and you followed up. And do you think that this is relevant, Mark, for today, that younger professionals should follow in your footsteps? Or do you think they should take care of business on social media? What tips do you have for someone starting out trying to get their first gig?
Well, when I was starting out, writing letters and using sort of analog resources was the best available. If I was starting out now, I would certainly try to contact people on Twitter or using various social media. But the principle stays the same, where that you identify the circle that you want to travel in,
Hmm.
contact the people in that circle and sort of announce yourself as like, this is what I want to do. And
Oh,
then
wow.
you demonstrate how you would do the job by the way you look for work. So if you want to be seen, if you want people to know that you are persistent and professional and courteous, the way
Mhm.
you sort of look for work and stay in touch with them tells them about you.
Excellent.
And that's a sort of way to sort of showcase yourself to the people you want to work with, to know the names of who it is that you are want to be associated with. I mean, I learned the names of the editors that I really wanted to work with, but based on the movies that I was the biggest fan of. So
Mhm.
I could say honestly, I would love to work with you because you did this movie, and that would be a real honor to be able to work with you,
So
which
you
people
just
respond well to.
wonderful. So that's great. You mentioned the editors, like speaking directly to them. And if we read your book, we understand that editors have a huge impact in the final result of the film. but it seems that there's not enough recognition or awareness of the fact that in the industry, you guys are running the show. I mean, how would you and your colleagues like to change that?
I don't know if that's ever going to change. I mean, I think editors now get more respect than they used to. I mean, animation has its own category, editing has its own awards, but good editing is invisible. And it's a position that requires a lot of tact and diplomacy. And there's usually bigger egos in the directors and producers, and the editor is an invisible ally. The people who matter on the inside of the production know the value that an editor brings, and that's enough. I
You are
mean,
right.
Steven Spielberg's editor Michael Kahn told me that he's happy to be the man behind the man or the person behind the star, and that professional relationship is the one that matters most.
Oh, that's awesome. I would ask you three more questions, but I want to bring on Alejandra, who's going to be asking you the next one. So thank you very much for
My
those.
pleasure.
Hi, Mark. Such a pleasure to meet you once again. Thanks for
To you
joining us
too.
today.
Pleasure to be here.
There was so much information in your book that I found to be so useful. And you talked a lot about the elements in the film industry, like cinematography, costumes, casting, etc. And the content industry used to have a really high bar to get into it. But now it seems like anybody could be a content creator and have their own YouTube channel. What advice would you give to those just starting off in the industry?
I think do what you love. I mean, if you really want to make these things and be consistent, that if you make something and that's the only one, you plan on making one thing, you're not going to build a career like that. If you really want to be a writer or be an editor or be a director, and in whatever medium, whether it's on short reels or longer features or documentaries or however you see what's most passionate for you, to see it as a practice that you're going to do it whether it's successful or not, that you're going to keep doing it, and that sort of consistency of effort and learning is what will build your experience. And by building your experience, then you have more to offer. I mean, when I was starting out, I would take these jobs as an assistant editor to sort of grow my resume. But what I learned the most from was going out to Nepal with a little Hi8 camera and producing something myself as like a one-man band. And I learned a lot from that. And it demonstrates to people how much I love making movies and making these kinds of things. And you can choose what you do yourself. And that gives people a better idea of who you are instead of just taking the projects that are available.
And I love the way you talk about it as if you want people to bring their authentic self into film producing and into forming content. What advice would you give us in the sense of really structuring and putting together content that's meaningful, but that will also make it memorable?
Well, what makes it meaningful is what it means to you. I mean, if you come at the subject with a particular passion or a particular interest, that it's something that you really want to explore, then you're bringing the right attitude to the project. And to make it impactful means you don't have that. You can do what you can do to promote the book and give your all to it. Like what I'm doing is promoting a book so that I love the book that I wrote. I feel it's valuable for people. I want to meet the people who it's meaningful to. And I have readers in mind, and I sort of make my effort to go out and meet them. And I think whatever project you have, whether it's a restaurant or a book or a reel, if it's something you love, you want to share it. And the way that you share it shows who you are and why you love and why someone else would spark to it as well.
Thank you, Mark.
I'd like to cut in here and just ask you, Mark, if you could share with us. There's an example that I absolutely loved in the book. You talk about a situation. I think you're citing a film where there's an individual who finds out that they have a cancer diagnosis. and they're in a cafe and they're kind of spilling their heart to one
Ah,
of their colleagues. Could you comment on this? This is one of the most fantastic, I guess, techniques or tricks, we could say, tips that I found in the book. So if you could just comment on this, I think it would be very valuable.
sure. You're talking about the movie Ikiru, which is a Japanese movie by the Akira Kurosawa. It's a black and white movie made in the 50s, and it's about a government functionary who discovers that he's got a cancer diagnosis. The first thing you see is an X-ray, and you see that there's a dark spot, which is sad for this poor man who sort of works as sort of a low-level functionary. And what's brilliant about the film, what the filmmaker does, is that when he goes to tell his friend in a tea house about what's happened to getting this sad medical news, behind him is a birthday party of young girls. And so you see these young teenage girls being very excited and happy. They're wearing little hats. They have things that they blow, and they're having a wonderful time while he's telling a sad story. And it makes his story more poignant because of the contrast between what he has to say and in the world that's around him. If he was telling the story on its own, it would have some emotional impact, but it is multiplied by having a contrast with the action that's happening in the background that's unrelated to him, but in some ways is opposite. It sharpens the emotion of it because it makes you read into it. He doesn't tell you while the world is celebrating, I have this terrible news. The viewer reads into the picture. And by visual contrast and building visual contrast, you can bring more emotion into your stories.
It makes it even sadder. I actually tried that on an Instagram live in a story I was telling. I used that element of contrast, and it worked fantastically. And it felt, because it was very authentic as well. It felt very natural, just to create that contrast. But it really drew people in, and it even drew me more into the story I was telling. So that's a
Good.
fantastic tip. So one final.
Melissa, sorry. I wanted to also ask a question regarding storytelling, if I may. I just want to ask you, Mark, if you could just tell us in a few sentences why it's so important for people to tell their stories, especially with so much content that bombards us every day and draws our attention to it. How do we get our story out there? Why is it so important? What advice would you give us?
I think stories are how we make meaning in the world, how we make sense of our life. I mean, if you see your life as a random events that happen one after the other with no control, you'll be limited by what you can experience of life. If you can see your life as a story, you can explain to people how you see the world. And by telling your story, gives you a chance to sort of participate in the culture around you, and having a clear understanding of what you can control and what you can't control, and what kind of story, how you see your own story is how you see life and how you can interact with other people. And it gives people an insight into who you are, and gives them and that they look for the stories in their life that have points of contact with what you share. And having a positive story where you emphasize resilience and resourcefulness and your ability to overcome setbacks and have a good sense of humor about the things that you've done that maybe didn't work out the way you planned, lets people connect with you in a way that's human and authentic.
Exactly. It's such a powerful connection to one another.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you, Mark.
Now, Mark, the book is called, as I said at the beginning, it's called Over the Shoulder. Could you just go into that first for just a minute? It's called Over the Shoulder: A Freelancer's Guide to Telling Stories and Editing Films. And I do want to tell everyone, this is not just for film editors. This is for all of us entrepreneurs out there. This is just a fantastic way to learn some of the tips and techniques. But again, it's called Over the Shoulder. And, one of the things that we notice today is that because of the digital and modern workplace working side by side, maybe this over the shoulder learning, this over the shoulder, being able to pass this down, the craft of storytelling, that might be compromised. So could you just tell us a little bit more about what over the shoulder is, what it means for you, and how you envision that might change in the coming years?
Sure. Over the shoulder, in filmmaking terms, it refers to a shot where the camera is over one person's shoulder, viewing somebody else who they're talking to. So it implies the closeness of two characters. You can see the space between them, that they share a space, and that we're seeing it clearly through the point of view of the shoulder that we're over. So you sit over my shoulder and looking at you, we're seeing you through my eyes. If the camera's over your shoulder, you're seeing me through your eyes. So there's a sense of point of view. And then it's also, as you mentioned, over the shoulder is how we learn, by proximity. If you want to learn from a baker, you stand over their shoulder, you can see how the intimate details of what they do to bake. Or if you have your teacher over your shoulder, if I have an experienced, accomplished editor looking over my shoulder as I work, intimate one-on-one details and messages and education can be shared by having the two people be close enough together to be able to share a space. We're losing that some. Analog editing, when I started, I would actually sit over an editor's shoulder when I was starting out as an apprentice or an assistant. And now everybody has their own workstation. A lot of work is done like this over streaming media.
Mhm.
And we've lost that sense of being close to somebody that you're learning from, or that something is being shared. And I wrote the book as a way to sort of create that feeling of sitting over someone's shoulder, so that you feel like you're getting something that's a message that's meant for you, and how you can then pass that on to the people that you eventually will be helping when you're in a position to.
Now, is there one final message that you'd like to leave everyone with before we start to wrap up today?
Buy the book. I think that I really want to share it with the world. That
And
I think that it has value, and what I've seen from the reaction to the book so far, from the ladies here on the call today, which is asking wonderful questions and really showing an interest in it, really touches me. And to be able to share what I've learned over the course of my working life as an editor with people who are looking to start out or looking to apply those same principles to the stories that you want to tell, is so satisfying and rewarding, that I encourage people to do it, to take what you know and share it with the world, because there are people who will benefit from it, and it sort of creates a virtuous circle of gratitude. That's a wonderful thing to behold, and it makes me want to write another one.
there's a line in the book. It's one of my favorite lines in the books because I feel like it tells the entrepreneurial journey, and it reminded me when I was actually reading the book. I've been looking for the last over a year. I've been saying I want to become a great storyteller. How do I do this? What do I have to read? Who do I have to know? And then I found your book, right? But the line in the book that so touched me is, it says, not this is the entrepreneurial journey summarized in one sentence. It says nothing, 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 maybe nothing, more nothing, sigh, success. And so that's what I felt when I found your book. I felt success. I found it. I found the tool that I've been looking for. So thank you for that, Mark. That's all we have time for today. So please, everyone, go get Mark's book. It's Over the Shoulder: A Freelancer's Guide to Telling Stories and Editing Films. You can get it at sevenpinespublishing.com. That's the number 7, pinespublishing.com. And you can also find it on Amazon. So thank you, Mark, and keep building, everyone.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.